This is probably going to be the first video on my channel that's not usually scripted, because I usually write a script and then I follow the script and then I have to make images for my videos and then edit everything into one. But this is going to be the first video where there is no script, right? I have a lot of things that I want to say in this video and I literally had to print. I have a whole list of things. So this is going to be quite a long video for this one, right? So the first thing is face reveal. Okay, this is how I look like in real life. The profile pic that I have for the channel, this is me. Wherever you're going to see the photo, this is me, but a bit more animated. So that's how I look like in real life, okay? The second thing that I want to say is that although I have not hit 25,000 subscribers yet, I know it's a big number and it just looks better in the title, but I'm just saying thanks in advance. So thank you so much for 25,000 subs. It's a really big number for this channel, okay? It's a big number to me, especially. I know nowadays it doesn't really count as a big number, but it's a very big number to me. So thank you so much for 25,000 subscribers. I'm grateful and thankful for all of you. Okay, thank you for this big number. So, the following topic for this video is going to be a tale about not seeing a future. What I'm going to be talking about in this video will primarily cover everything from me moving to this country in the United States all the way to now, basically, right? And there's a lot to cover. It's going to be a sad story that's going to start sad, but then it's going to have a happy ending in the end, because there are many things that I want to say in this video, right? A tale about not seeing a future. So, here we go. Now, what I'm going to say here, I'm going to be very critical of the thing that I'm going to say now, right? Because it's a very touchy subject. The banner on my channel, on the screen, you'll see it somewhere, you'll see that I can speak Hebrew. And the way I learned Hebrew is from being born and raised in Israel. I was born and raised in Israel from 2003 all the way to like 2014. Okay, that's how I learned Hebrew. Now, I am fully aware of the conflict that's happening in Israel. The only thing that I'm going to say is that I have family living there. Okay? Please do not comment anything relating to the ongoing conflict that's happening in Israel. I am fully aware of what's happening in Israel. I have family living there that's affected by the ongoing conflict. So please do not write anything that's relating to this content, okay? I, as the creator, I have the right to remove and delete any comments that spread misinformation, hate speech, etc., etc. The only thing that I'm gonna say is that I was born there, okay? I cannot help it. I was just born there. And then my family and I immigrated to the United States in 2014. So yeah. In 2014, approximately, I think it was in August or September, my family and I moved from Israel to the United States, and we moved to Las Vegas, Nevada. I was almost 11 years old at the time, and me, my mom, and my dad moved to this country. We immigrated from Israel to the United States, to Las Vegas, Nevada, where my uncle used to live. And the whole point of this video, a tale about not seeing a future, will basically revolve around us trying to stabilize our lives. Okay, it took us a long time to stabilize in this country. And I have a completely different journey, which is by itself is quite irregular and quite messy. So there are many things that will unfold, so to speak. So when my family and I immigrated to the United States, I started going to middle school. And for those of you who are watching outside of the United States, the way that middle school works in the United States is that you go from grade 6 to grade 8, so 3 years, and then you go to high school from grade 9 to grade 12. I did not do my elementary education in this country from grade 1 to grade 5, okay? I did my elementary education in Israel, where I learned Hebrew. And I went to middle school from 2014 to like 2017. The journey by itself was a bit messy. I remember I had a lot of Mexican friends who didn't speak English. I also did not speak English, so they and I were in the same boat. And I actually have separate school stories saved for a different video. But that's my educational journey. If we go back to 2014, this is where my parents had a different path that I was not aware of fully because I was too young to understand it. But as I grew up, I started understanding it more. And what I'm talking about is a U.S. asylum, okay? A United States asylum. For those of you living out of the United States, or maybe you're in the United States and you don't know what it is, I'm reading this from the definition that Google is giving me for the USCIS. The USCIS is like an immigration system in this country, the United States Citizenship and Immigration Services. A U.S. asylum is a form of protection granted to individuals who fear persecution in their home country based on race, religion, nationality, membership in a particular social group or political opinion, and must be sought while physically present in the United States. In other words, it's a form of protection that you get from this country, and you will not be deported back to the country where you came from, right? So in 2014, my parents file for asylum. And the way that the process works is that you will get an interview date where you basically explain your story, explain everything that you went through. I'm obviously not going to say what I went through because it's very, very personal and I do not want to share any of this information because again, it's personal. So we immigrated in 2014 where my parents filed for asylum in hopes of staying in this country. First, you get like an interview date. Then if you pass the interview, then you are granted asylum. If not, more events have to happen, like appeals courts, regular courts, immigration judges, etc., etc. And my family and I, we went through all of this process. And this was happening back in like late 2014-ish. And this is where the point of the story really starts to elevate, so to speak, right? The point of the story is a tale about not seeing a future, right? Because my family and I, we didn't know what was going to happen with us, right? And that's the point of the story. This is where the journey starts. So when my parents and I filed for asylum, we get an interview date. And the interview date that we get is somewhere in March of 2018, right? So if you take a look at the timeline, I'm going to put a timeline on the screen somewhere and you'll see it throughout the video. The timeline goes from like late 2014 all the way to like March of 2018. So that's almost 3.5 years of waiting. My family and I have to wait 3.5 years for an asylum interview. That's a long time, right? And across this time, we get many things done, right? We adjust to the country. I finish middle school, then I become a high schooler, yada, yada, yada. This is where the point of the story really goes up. This is going off of the things that I want to say, because there are many things that I want to say in this video. So in 2017, I become a high school freshman. A high school is from 9th grade to 12th grade in the United States. And I become a freshman. And back then I had bad English. I didn't really have any friends. I just lived in limbo, basically. And the high school that I went to, it was actually a magnet high school. For those of you who don't know what a magnet high school is, a magnet school is a school that teaches the same things that a regular high school would teach, but it just does it faster and better. And the high school that I went to, it's called West Career and Technical Academy. I know the name sounds very emphasizing. You know, it's an academy and it's technical and it's career-based. We had a lot of strict teachers, a lot of strict classes. This is the first time in my life where I actually had depression. I don't know if I had clinical depression, but I was definitely battling demons. So times were bad. Then at some point, we get to early 2018. This is where the asylum interview starts to really going in. But in early 2018, this is where most of my classes became better, but the depression still stayed there. I had a very bad mental state back then in early 2018. But then the asylum interview comes back, right? March of 2018. This is when the interview happens, in March of 2018. Now, you know, you're probably thinking to yourself, okay, this is an interview. Okay, you have to drive somewhere and they interview you and you have to go through a process. When I tell you that my family and I, we had a U.S. asylum, that meant that we had to drive, because we lived in Las Vegas, we still live in Las Vegas, Nevada. We had to drive all the way from Las Vegas to like a city in Los Angeles. I think it's like a Los Angeles asylum office. We had to drive all the way that distance. And in 2018, my family and I were not making good income. Okay, we did not have a lot of income in 2018. Yeah, we had to spend money, and I'm reading this from the paper. We had to spend money on gas, food, finding a hotel to stay, lawyers that would represent us in the asylum. We had to get translators, interpreters, people that would translate the language because it wasn't in English. Okay, we spoke Russian in their interview. Then we had to get translations, documentation, all of that combined. We spent tens of thousands of dollars just to get from Las Vegas to California, do the interview, do the documentation, and we did not know what was this for, okay? And now granted, again, we chose this path, we chose to immigrate to this country, and then we chose to file for an asylum, okay? We chose this path, but we did not choose, you know, to pay a lot of money for all of these things. This was outside of our control. After the interview finishes, which again took place in California, we had to drive all the way back to Las Vegas. It's like a 4-hour drive. It's like really, really far away. Sometime later, we get an unknown response from the system, right? Because the system, the United States government and immigration services will decide whether or not my family and I will stay in this country. Sometime later, we get an unknown response. And we're told, okay, we don't really know what's happening with you. We would like to invite you for a second interview. And we're like, okay, now we have to spend more money on gas, food, translation, documentation. And they told us, okay, you'll have a second interview in June. Okay, so June of 2018, we have a second interview. Okay, and we have to spend money again on immigration. Yeah. In May of 2018, I finished my freshman year of high school. Okay, I finished my 9th grade, barely, but I still passed nonetheless. But then we get to June of 2018. By then, my family and I have lived in limbo. We lived in the complete unknown. We did not know what would happen with us. Okay, and we hoped that the second interview would do something. Then comes June of 2018, and I'm reading this from the papers that I have. So we have the second interview, we drive back to California. It was a bit shorter that time, they asked us less questions. And then after the interview is finished, we drive all the way back to Las Vegas. Sometime later, we get a response. Okay, we get a response from the immigration system in this country. And the response is, we are rejected. Our asylum case is completely rejected, and that means my family and I were going to be deported. And this happened in the summer of 2018. This is summer of 2018. The system tells us, oh, we don't want you here, we're going to deport you. And this completely shatters our family. It completely breaks us apart because we realized that we wasted so much money on documentation, translation, all for nothing. We spent tens of thousands of dollars on all of this stuff just for all of it to be rejected. And that's the point of the story. You know, a tale about not seeing a future. I did not see a future. I lived as an immigrant kid with bad English, with no friends, and I did not know what was going to happen with me. We did not know whether tomorrow we would stay in this country or be deported to the country where we came from. And that's the point of a tale about not seeing a future. We did not see a future. This is where I would like to make a small pause for the story because the story will continue on. So I would like to just slightly pause the story, introduce a different story that would just present more information. I would like to call it adding salt to my wound and rubbing the salt inside of my wound, because that's how it felt. Okay, I did not see a future, and that's the point of the story. So here's the other side of the story. This took place in summer of 2018, where I took like a sports program in my high school. It was a CrossFit program. CrossFit is like a mix of sports where there's a bunch of fitness, a bunch of athleticism, and I had friends in high school, well, during the summer, where all of us exercised, and it was a very, very fun time. But at the same time, you know, we had immigration that we had to go through. So I was taking a sports program, and I talked with my friends. I talked with my friends about like general things in life. Somehow, at some point, we started to talk about just philosophical things in life. All of my friends at that time, most of them were US citizens who were born in this country. So they did not have to worry about the problems that I had. So we get to talk about life. And this is again from the paper. I asked them, what problems did they have in their life as teenagers? And their answers completely made me laugh. Now, their problems made sense back then, right? Because they did not worry about broader problems and general problems like mine. My friends were telling me things like, oh, I failed this test. Oh, my crush doesn't love me. Oh, the garage door broke down. Oh, the fridge broke down. I wish I had your goddamn problems. The problems that they were having, they were basic general problems. Meanwhile, I had to worry about whether or not I was going to stay in this damn country, okay? That's what I had to worry about. Now, this is a very touchy point I want to specify on. I perfectly understand that everyone's problems are relative, okay? My problems are relative to your problems. And this is a sentence that I would like to add on to the story. And this applies to everybody, right? Including all of you who are watching this video. I told my friends, I am not saying that you have it easier than me. But what I am saying is that you can afford to fix your problems to a certain extent, of course. I am not saying that I have it harder than you. And I'm not saying that you have it easier than me. But what I am saying is that you can afford to fix your problems to a certain extent. You failed the test, you can retake a different one. Your crush doesn't love you, ask someone else. Your garage door broke down, you can buy a new one. The fridge broke down, buy a new one. My family and I couldn't afford any of these things. If something happened in our family where, I don't know, maybe like a fridge broke down or maybe a car accident, God forbid, that's it. It literally would have been game over for us, literally. At that point, it would have been easier to start life from scratch. So these are the problems that I had to worry about as a teenager, okay? I had to worry about whether or not I was going to stay in this country. My friends worried about simple things, and it made sense because all of them were US citizens. But for me, it was life or death. Now, I know immigration is not really, entirely on life or death, but it definitely felt like it. And that's the moral of the story. A tale about not seeing a future. I did not see a future with my own eyes when I was told, oh, we're going to deport you back. When my family and I were told, pack your stuff, leave now, we did not know what to do in this situation. That's what I had to worry about. A tale about not seeing a future. I did not know whether or not I was going to stay. I did not see a future. I did not know if I had a future because I couldn't stabilize in this country. And that's the point of the story. A tale about not seeing a future. Now, to add more salt into the wound and to rub the salt inside the wound, this is where I would like to pause the story just a bit more and add another element. And this is an element that I will expand that will come out in like a few days involving video gaming. This is, again, another part of the story. It's a bit off topic, but it still connects to the story. And this is a reading from the paper. In early 2018, a very popular video game came up. A very, very popular video game that everybody played in early 2018. Do you want to guess which video game it is? Just guess. Fortnite, okay? Fortnite is the video game that came up in 2018. Now, the reason I'm mentioning this, I'm a true video gamer, okay? I like to play video games. In 2018, I played video games that I could. And in 2018, this is where I also decided that I want to become a video game content creator. That was the whole point of me mentioning this point. I remember in 2018, I decided with myself that I want to become a content creator. Back when the YouTube algorithm was different. I wanted to become a YouTuber, content creator, specifically a video game content creator, but I couldn't think about it. I remember watching as all of my favorite YouTubers back then, they were my idols. YouTubers like Ninja, like FaZe Rug, like PewDiePie, Mr. Beast, popular MMOs. Some I still watch, some I don't, but the point is, it's because of them that I wanted to become a content creator. They influenced me to become a content creator. However, in that time, considering all the things that I went through, like middle school, high school, and this is coming from the paper, considering all of these things, like immigration, deportation, education, exams, projects in school, the desire to become a YouTuber, the envy and jealousy that I had for my idols, okay? I watched them with envy and jealousy. I wanted to become a content creator, and I watched with jealousy and envy how all of my favorite YouTubers were making millions of dollars from YouTube, considering all of these elements. But in that time, life told me, no. You will never become a YouTuber. You first have to focus on staying in this damn country, focus on the papers, and then you can worry about becoming a YouTuber. Life told me, no, you will never become a YouTuber. And I even remember conversations that I had with my friends in high school. I told them I want to be a YouTuber, right? And they encouraged me. They told me, yeah, you should go for it. But I treated myself like a piece of crap. I treated myself like I will never become a YouTuber. I told myself, you will never become a YouTuber. You will never become a content creator. That's how I treated myself, very pessimistically, because of the status that I had. I could only dream of becoming a YouTuber. But life told me you will never become a YouTuber because the status that you have is messed up. And that was my dream, to become a content creator, specifically a gamer, but content creator in general. But life told me, nope, you will never become a YouTuber. And that's the point of the story, because I did not see a future. So now, returning to the summer of 2018, where the immigration continues in my story. Considering this mess, immigration, deportation, education, exams and projects that I had in school, the desire to become a YouTuber, and the envy and the jealousy that I had for my idols, this is the reason I avoided doing what others did. I remember back in the summer of 2018, when I was, I think, like 14 years old, I avoided opening a bank account. I avoided having a girlfriend. Not that I had a choice. I avoided getting a permit. I avoided building serious relationships. I avoided opening a gaming channel. I avoided buying a good computer to open a good YouTube channel. I avoided all of these things because of immigration, because I did not know whether or not I was going to stay in this country. I avoided doing all of these things because my family and I had to save every nickel, every dime, every penny, every dollar for immigration, just in case. My family and I had to preserve money for immigration, considering translation, documentation, attorneys, lawyers, translators. We spent thousands of dollars on all of these things. And immigration in this country is expensive. If you want to stabilize yourself as an immigrant in this country, we had to preserve all of the money that we had for immigration, just in case. Thank freaking goodness that nothing has happened to us back in 2018. There was no car crash, or the fridge did not break, or thank God that I passed my classes at least. Thank God that nothing happened to us. That's the tale about not seeing a future. I could not see a future at that time. Meanwhile, everyone around me, including my friends, they had somewhat stable lives. I was completely messed up with my life. I couldn't see a future. And this is the point of this video. A tale about not seeing a future. I did not see a future when I was an immigrant in 2018. That's the moral of the story. Now, optimistically speaking, some of you might think, technically speaking, you could have tried something in 2018, right? If my dream was to become a YouTuber, I could have tried something. Like using my phone to record or doing reactions. No. I couldn't become a YouTuber back in 2018. This is not being pessimistic, it's being realistic. Why not? Because my family and I couldn't afford anything to become a YouTuber, right? Considering the mess that we had. I remember watching tutorials that said something like, oh, all you have to have is a good computer, good microphone, good camera, and you're good to go. Yay, you're going to become a YouTuber if you have these things. I couldn't afford a microphone to become a YouTuber. I couldn't afford a camera, a web camera to become a YouTuber. I couldn't afford a gaming computer to become a YouTuber. Considering these factors, I was an immigrant, a teenager who was 14 years old, with bad English, with a bad accent, with no social skills, no computer, no money. I did not even have a table. I had a small table that I used for my laptop, and that was it. And it was a cheap laptop. I did not even have a setup, a table, to become a YouTuber. This is what I went through. My family and I, like I said, we had to preserve all the money that we had for immigration, just in case. Considering these factors, who the hell would watch me? Who would watch me? Who? Who the hell would watch a 14-year-old teenager with bad English, no social skills, no setup, play video games, and, become famous and get money off of that? Who would watch me? No one would, realistically speaking. That's why I avoided buying a computer. That's why I avoided buying a table or buying a camera or buying a microphone or I don't know what. I literally had to avoid all of these things. Not that I had a choice. I had no money for these things. And I treated myself like a loser. And even if I did start a YouTube channel and I became a YouTuber at that time, the country would have told me, hey, we don't like you, we're deporting you, pack your stuff, leave now. What would have happened then? What would have been the point of starting a YouTube channel or opening a bank account? What would have been the point? For all of us to be canceled sometime later? That's the reason why I avoided all of these things. I lived with no future. I lived in anxiety, stress, battling demons in high school. That's the stuff that I went through, that my family and I went through, worrying about stabilizing ourselves in this country through a U.S. asylum. If suppose, we would have bought a good house and a good car, and then the country would have said, oh, we don't like you, we're deporting you. What would have been the point? What was the point? What would have been the purpose of stabilizing ourselves for all of it to be reversed later? What was the point? Now, granted, we chose to have this path. We chose to immigrate. Well, we did not immigrate from Israel. We escaped Israel because of bad times. We came to this country. We chose to go through an asylum system. On one hand, yes, we spent a lot of money on this path, but on the other hand, it completely blew out of proportion. It was outside of our control. Immigration in the United States, it's not something that you can control. That's what I think. That's the experience that I have. That's the tale about not seeing a future. We did not know what would happen to us at that time. And this is a tale about not seeing a future. I couldn't see a future in front of me when I was in, high school and in the summer of 2018. 2018 was easily the worst year of my life. And this is where I would like to add a quote of myself in this story. Okay, and this is coming from the paper. I went through what others were lucky enough not to experience. I went through a U.S. asylum system, while my friends that were born in this country, they were lucky enough not to go through immigration and documentation and interpretation and translation and whatever. They were lucky enough not to go through all of these things. I did not go through these things. I survived these things back then. Okay, 2018. However, we did get a form of relief. This was, after the summer of 2018, after I finished my freshman year, we do get a form of relief. We get to appeal the case. The system that rejected the case, we get to appeal the case. For those of you who don't know what an appeal is, an immigration appeal is a legal process where an individual can challenge a decision made by the USCIS. It essentially allows you to request a higher authority to review and potentially overturn a denial or other unfavorable decision. In other words, it's a way to challenge the rejected case that you got. And my family and I, we got an asylum case that was rejected, and we hoped to overturn it in hopes of turning something negative into a positive. So we got an appeal. And the way that the process works is that you get some type of date. This is, we no longer have to drive to, California. Everything stays in Las Vegas. So you go through like a court, it's like a big building. You have to go to like a higher floor. There's a judge, there's a court, a prosecutor, there's a lawyer, attorney that defends you, and then the case basically starts. And this is where in the story, many events start to get delayed, okay? And the theme of being delayed and postponed and delayed, it will be all over the place, delaying and delaying and delaying. So from late 2018 to early 2019, I become a high school sophomore. A high school sophomore is basically a 10th grader, and this is where basically everything starts to get even worse, educationally speaking. I have strict classes, I have strict teachers. Basically, my sophomore year, my 10th grade in my life was the worst education year in my life, okay? I had the worst teachers, I had the worst classes. It was basically the worst grade in my life, okay? The 10th grade, from late 2018 to early 2019. At some point, and this is again, early 2019, at some point, we get to appeal the case, right? It was somewhere in like April to May of 2019. When I was finishing my sophomore year, we no longer had to drive to California, okay? Everything was in Las Vegas. But the depression was still there. We still had to spend money on, on papers, attorneys, translators, etc., etc. Everything gets delayed. Everything starts to get delayed at this point. This is another reason why I couldn't see a future at the time. Okay, this is 2019. When the time approaches for the appeals court that we go to, we did not have the time or the money for an attorney. So we basically go to the court and we're like the last ones to be accepted. We spend like hours in the court, where all the people are, but we were the last one to get accepted. And we say, okay, we don't have an attorney to represent us. We would like to request more time. And we are given more time for an attorney. And the date that we're given is like somewhere in September. September of 2019 is where we get the date to show up with an attorney, and then we'll get a different date. I'll get to this part in a second. By then, I finish my sophomore year, I finish my 10th grade in high school, barely, and then I become a junior in high school. A junior is an 11th grader. By that time, classes become simpler, everything becomes easier educationally, but the depression is still there. I still have, projects and exams and like presentations that I have to do. The educational depression in my mind is still there. Then comes September of 2019. Okay, in September of 2019, and this is reading from the papers, we go with an attorney. He represents us legally and formally in the court, and then we get a final date for a hearing date. We get the final date, the final shot of staying in this country, considering, the appeals that we had, hearing date. For those of you who don't know what that is the initial hearing in an immigration court proceeding. It's a short preliminary hearing on immigration matters. You will meet an immigration judge to figure out how your case will proceed. So in other words, it's the final shot that you get of staying in this country. And we get a date for that, okay, in September. And the date that we get, considering the topic of delaying and postponing, the date that we get is April 2021. First, we wait 3.5 years for an interview. Then, months for another interview. Then, a year for an appeals court. Then months for another appeals court. And now we have to wait almost 2 years for a final decision. Talk about a freaking delay. So many delays. And in this timeline, again, I'm going to add this timeline on the screen. You'll see it from 2014 all the way to 2021. 7 years of waiting to see what will happen to you. Okay, this is the final shot that we have. Okay, we're going to have to make it count. All we have to do is to make it to April of 2021. From September 2019 all the way to April of 2021. By then, in late 2019, I'm already a high school junior. I have to focus on the tests that I have. This is where we have to take the ASAT test, which is like a standardized test the juniors have to take in high school. I have to worry about, exams, presentations, projects, yada, yada, yada. Considering the long threshold, the long time interval that we got from 2019 to 2021, that was a long time, but at least it gives us time. So things are, going somewhat okay. But then, we get to 2020, and everyone knows what happened in 2020. COVID-19 happened. There's a pandemic, lockdowns, quarantine, shutdowns, everyone is at home. Then when I became a senior, which is a 12th grade, and it's the final grade that you go through as a high schooler. So 2020, everything is just online. Everything is at home. At that time, in 2020, I can perfectly understand. For many people, 2020 was like, the worst year ever. Everything was shut down. But for me, it was the best year ever. 2020 for me was the best year ever. I got to sleep. I got to be productive. I got to do my homework. 2020 literally saved me from, battling demons and depression and whatnot. 2020 literally saved me. The amount of sleep that I got, the amount of time that I got to do my homework and to be productive and responsible. And then when I became a senior, I finished my first semester. By then, we go to 2021. We're heading to the dreadful hearing date that we're gonna have in April. January 2021, February 2021, March 2021, April 2021. Now we get to the final date, the final shot that we have of staying in this country. My fate will be determined in this country. I am literally about to graduate and finish high school, and here I am worrying about my fate, worrying about whether or not I'm going to stay in this damn country, based on a decision of an immigration judge who will decide my fate. Before the day happens, right? And again, this was like early April, considering the theme of delaying and postponing and delaying and postponing, we have a special change of events before the day comes. And I remember this vividly, right? This was one day before we had the date, before the day came. We get a call from our attorney, from our lawyer in the morning. This is what he tells us. Oh, remember the court date that you have? You know, it's going to happen tomorrow. Well, unfortunately, your judge, your immigration judge, she's sick, okay? She has COVID. She has the coronavirus. So she's not going to make it to the court. So we're going to have to postpone your court. We're going to have to delay the date to December 2023. My family and I came to this country in 2014 as immigrants, and we waited 3.5 years for an interview. Then, months later, got another interview. Then, almost a year later, we get an appeals case, an appeals court. Months later, we get another date. Then, almost 2 years later, we get a hearing date, and now you're telling me it's postponed? It's delayed again? This time, it's like 2.5 years now. We have to wait even more. You can even look at this timeline. I don't know where I'm going to put it, but the timeline from 2014 all the way to 2023, this is how long you have to wait for your fate to be decided in this country as an immigrant. I now have to wait, give or take, almost 10 years. 9.5, technically speaking. To make matters worse, let's just say 10 years. I had to wait 10 years for a decision of my fate, of my status, to be determined in this country. 10 freaking years. My family and I were completely lost. We completely did not know what to do in this situation. On one hand, yes, we do get more time, but at the same time, we were this close. We were this freaking close from a decision. And now we got delayed, postponed, moved to 2.5 years from now. That's the point of a tale about not seeing a future. That's the moral of the story. Delaying and postponing and delaying and more waiting and waiting and waiting. At that point, I said, there is no future. I do not have a future ahead of me. I no longer believe in this thing. I completely lost my dreams of becoming, of becoming a YouTuber. I could only want to become a YouTuber. But life told me, nope, you will never become a YouTuber. This is a tale about not seeing a future. I did not see a future. I basically lived in limbo, in the complete unknown. In conclusion, my family and I had to accept this status, okay? We had to accept it. We said, okay, 2.5 more years of waiting, okay? This is the final shot, the final opportunity that you have. 2.5 years of waiting to see what will happen to us. At that point, in June of 2021, I graduated from high school. Okay, I finished and graduated from high school. I basically exited this prison. The depression stayed behind, but I still had this mindset of now I have to apply for college. But at least high school was finished, but the education continued. Now, after I'm finished with high school, I have to go on to college. Okay, some people can choose not to go to college. I chose to go to college, and I went to a UNLV. I went to the university that I still attend, University of Nevada, Las Vegas, UNLV, the most diverse institution in this country. And I decided to go with a computer science major. This is late 2021. The high school mindset fell off, but the university mindset was new. But it was definitely a lot easier than high school. In fact, I have a whole separate video that I'm gonna make, probably gonna come out in a few days, where I explain school stories that I got from high school and from my university. Then, 2022 comes around the corner, and by then I start to take web-based classes, where there is no class, there is no time, you get to do the homework whenever you want, however you want it. And I start to take a lot of web-based classes, because I discovered in 2020 that I'm really productive when I'm home. I'm more productive, which is why I chose to take web-based classes when I was finishing my freshman year in UNLV. I finished my freshman year, then comes the summer of 2022, but then comes my hardest semester as a sophomore, as a second-year student in UNLV. Because my major was computer science, I had to take a computer science course, a chemistry lab, a chemistry course, calculus, and like a Spanish elective. And this is where the mindset that I had brought me back to my high school days. It brought me back to 2018. I had a very strict professor for my computer science class. Calculus was kind of bad, but I still passed. The chemistry class was horrible. And I told myself, if this is a computer science major, I cannot keep going. And it was the hardest semester that I ever had as an undergraduate student in UNLV. At that point, because the semester was so hard, I actually decided to switch majors. I went from computer science to Spanish, and I still study Spanish to this day. The institution that I go to, UNLV, allows a student to change a major. Okay, I don't know about other countries or other states, other cities, but UNLV offers students the opportunity to change majors. So I said, I cannot keep going with this mess. I don't want to have the mindset that I had in 2018 with the depression and everything. So I said, okay, you know what? Let me change majors. I changed my major, and then we go to 2023. I enter 2023 with a lot of Spanish classes that I have to take. But then, 2023 is the dreadful year where we have the hearing date. But then, 2023 easily becomes the second worst year in my life. If 2018 was the worst year of my life, 2023 is the second year. The amount of stuff that my family and I had to go through in 2023, even my worst enemy, I do not wish them this depression and this stress and anxiety and this, demon battling that I had, okay? The mess that we had, not just from education and immigration, the mess that we had also came from things that we couldn't control, okay? This was back in 2023. We get to April. And in April of 2023, one of the most devastating and heartbreaking events happened in my family. I mentioned in the beginning of the video where my family and I immigrated to the US, to Las Vegas in 2014, where my uncle used to live. Eventually, he moved out from Las Vegas and moved to Los Angeles. So we lived in Las Vegas, he lived in Los Angeles. A very devastating event happens in April of 2023. My uncle sadly dies in Los Angeles, California. And this event completely breaks all of us to pieces, okay? It affects not only me, but it affects my mom because it's my mom's brother. It affects my mom, my dad. It affects the family that I have in Israel because, I have a sister, I have grandparents, and it affects everyone. It completely breaks us all apart. And we go back to this depression that we had in 2018. We get this stress and anxiety. We have to drive all the way to California to solve his problems, spend money on gas, food, hotels, papers, documentation. It took us months. It took us like 2 months to solve his mess that he had. The death of my uncle completely broke us all apart, okay? It broke our mentality. We, after solving his mess for 2 months, we get to June of 2023, okay? And June of 2023 is when I started my YouTube channel, okay? I actually opened the account for the channel, The Language Bro, I think it was on May 17th, 2023. But then the first video that I ever had was uploaded on June 11th, 2023. So June 2023 is when I started my YouTube channel. Now, the reason why I decided to open a channel is because I opened a channel out of pity and out of sorrow. I did not see myself succeeding as a YouTuber. I remember the very first content that I did, I had basic thumbnails, basic pictures, short videos, basic titles. I spoke super fast, the visuals, trash. The audio, trash. Me speaking I had a lot of people that told me, okay, you're speaking way too fast. You have to slow down. I wanted to listen, but I couldn't because I was focused on the mess that I had in my head. The depression, my uncle's death, immigration, yada, 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 okay? And the reason why I decided to open a YouTube channel when I was like 19 is because I told myself, if this is the end, if this is, where the end comes to all of us, immigration, my uncle dying, all of these things combined, if this is the end, at least let me accomplish my dreams. In 2018, I had the desire to become a YouTuber, but I never saw myself becoming a YouTuber. I want to become a YouTuber, but life told me, nope, focus on immigration first. And it has been happening for a long time. So I told myself, okay, at least let me open a channel. I remember when I opened the channel, it took me a few weeks to actually open it. Then I remember I had 30, maybe 60 subs. I had short videos. I did not have a lot of views and I did not really care. And my content shows. In the beginning, from June 2023 all the way to December 2023, my content was sloppy. Okay, and it shows. It was careless because I did not take it seriously. That's why I was so careless and so, poor with my YouTube channel. I did not see myself succeeding. I just wanted to open a YouTube channel for the sake of opening a YouTube channel, just to see how it feels to open a YouTube channel. I opened it out of pity and sorrow, okay? After my uncle's death, after I opened my YouTube channel, then we get to September of 2023. This is where I become a UNLV junior. I still take Spanish classes as usual. But then, comes October of 2023. Guess what happens on October 7th, 2023? The Hamas is a terrorist organization that invades Israel because they occupy the Gaza Strip. They go to Israel and the atrocities that they commit in the process, words cannot even explain what my family went through in that time, okay? My family was affected in the process where these terrorists invaded the land and then committed the worst atrocities ever. My family was affected, and not in Las Vegas, but the family that I have in Israel. At this point, My family says, we're done. That's it. There is no future. Forget the case. Forget YouTube. Forget everything. We're done. This is the end. And I was prepared for it. This is, figuratively speaking, this is the end. Considering the hearing that we had, which already made us nervous, we now have to worry about our family in Israel. I worry about the exams and the education that I have. My family worries about the other family that I have in Israel. We worry about all of these things at once. After my uncle's death, after I open a YouTube channel, after I have exams, now there's an invasion in Israel, there's a war in Israel. We are done. We are completely freaking done. If this is the end, this is the end. Not even my worst enemy, I wish them this depression and this stress that I had to go through. I went through my uncle's death, I went through education, immigration, a war in Israel, because again, my family was affected by what happened, and now we have to worry about hearing date, which is the final shot, which should have been in 2021. Then we get to December of 2023. We are broken. We are done. We get to December of 2023, and we get the hearing date. My family and I, me, my dad, and my mom, we have to it's in Las Vegas. We have to drive to this big building in Las Vegas where there's the court, there's the judge, there's the prosecutor or, district attorney, and our attorney that represents us, okay? Our lawyer that represents us as immigrants. The date comes on that day. The court in itself, the date itself lasted just a few hours. And then we finally get a decision from an immigration judge. An immigration judge gives us a decision. And the decision that we get is we are granted asylum in this country. In December of 2023, my family and I became asylees in this country. That's the formal term for people who have asylum. After almost 10 years of waiting, we get asylum in this country. Our lives become stable. And we were told, an immigration judge, she told us, considering the case, considering the evidence, considering what's happening in Israel, we are granting you asylum. And in that moment, when the judge put down the papers in front of us, all of us started crying. Okay? My mom, my dad, me, even our lawyer, everyone starts crying in the court. And I'm a person who never cries. And the tears that we had, on one hand, they were tears of happiness. Or, the act of allowing us to stay in this country, yeah, it's tears of happiness, it's tears of joy. But on the other hand, they were tears of relief. They were tears of consolation. I remember when I exited the court and I went to the bathroom and I looked myself in the mirror, I told myself, as I was crying, I had tears in my eyes, I had to wipe them off, and I told myself, you're safe. You are okay. You are protected in this country. Okay? And this is what asylum is. It's a form of protection. And we got that after 10 years. The tears themselves were tears of relief. It wasn't like, oh, we finally got it. Yay, we're happy. I mean, we were happy, but it wasn't the causation of this. The tears that my family and I had, it wasn't like, oh, we finally got it. It was, we no longer have to wait. Nothing will ever be delayed ever again. Nothing will be postponed. The relief that we got from the immigration judge, the relief that lifted from our shoulders, the pressure, the burden, everything that we carried on our back with the delaying and postponing, delaying, postponing, everything that we carried lifted from our shoulders. It got lifted. It was a form of freedom. Okay, it was a form of protection. And that's what happened on that date in December of 2023. We get asylum and we become asylees. At that point, we were safe, we were protected, we were happy, we were reunited, and we were grateful and thankful for the opportunity to stay in this country. We were no longer going to be deported. We are granted asylum and we are protected. And this is where I'll return the quote that I said previously. I went through what others were lucky enough not to experience. A tale about not seeing a future. This is where the point of the tale itself ends, a tale about not seeing a future. However, the depression and the anxiety, although it slightly lowered, it still stayed there. Considering that my family and I had to worry about my other family in Israel because of the war, because of the terrorists. When a person gets asylum in the USA, this is where they have to file for a green card. Okay, maybe you're watching this video outside of the United States, or maybe you're in the United States and you're trying to stay. When a person gets an asylum, they have to file for a green card. Everyone knows what a green card is. It's a document that allows you to become a permanent resident in this country, right? And the process is very tedious. At that point, I finished my first semester as a junior. I finished my second semester. We get to the summer of 2024. Okay. The summer of 2024, literally 1 year ago. my family and I, we start to file for a green card, and the application is tedious. Okay, the application is super long, super hard, and we did it without any attorney. We did it without any attorney, without any lawyer that would help us. The reason why we did that is to save money. You know, if any of you are watching this video and you're trying to apply for a green card, last time I checked, you literally have to spend thousands of dollars for an attorney, for a translator, for translating documents, for whatever. You have to spend thousands of dollars to apply for a green card, whether you're an asylee or a worker or marriage-based or whatever. You have to give tens of thousands of dollars for the application and then tens of thousands of dollars to attorneys and lawyers that would do it for you. But we did it ourselves. I made sure that our application was perfect to file for a green card. Now we're getting to the final page of the story, and the story is going to end. Bear with me. This section here that I'm going to mention, this strictly applies for all of you watching this video who are green card seekers or, asylees. Whether you're outside of the United States or inside the United States, I actually wrote a whole paragraph of things that you have to make copies of for the green card application, right? So in case you're trying to apply for a green card, these are the things that you need, okay? And I have a list here. I counted all of these things. You have to have a cover letter, a green card form, a fee, a proof of granted asylum, an evidence of 1 year of physical presence in the United States, 2 passport-style photos, a copy of your ID, a copy of a birth certificate, a copy of a passport page with non-immigrant visa with admission parole stamp, a medical examination form for immigrants, a copy of proof of maintained lawful status, and a copy of certified police records for discretion. These are the things that you need for a green card application. And my family did all of these things in the summer of 2024. And now we're just waiting. We're waiting to get a green card. Okay, this is our status where we are no longer immigrants. We are asylees. We're protected. We are just waiting for a green card. Now the amount of documents that we had to file, the depression did return. The stress and the anxiety to make sure we have everything right, considering that I have education that I need to finish. I need to finish a Spanish major, considering all of these things. Luckily, the application itself, all of that took place in the summer when I had no summer classes. I was just resting. Thank God that I used the summertime for my benefit. Talk about being productive and responsible. At this point, it's May of 2025. I recently just finished my senior year as a fourth year UNLV undergraduate student. I did 4 years of education in UNLV, considering that I changed majors, and now I have 1 more year to go. 1 more year to finish my Spanish major. Now that my family and I are safe, now that I have a relatively good YouTube channel, now that I'm on my journey to finish my Spanish degree, my Spanish major, which I will finish in a year from now that I'm on this process, now that my life is stable, the only way is up. The only way for me and for all of you watching this video, the only way is up. The only way is to continue building up, basically bettering our lives. I remember back in 2018 where I punished myself and I viewed myself like a loser, that I will never become a YouTuber, I will never become a content creator, but now 7 years later, I'm a YouTuber. 25,000 subs is not a big number, but it still qualifies as a content creator. I still make money from YouTube, which I'm thankful for all of you watching this video and the rest of the videos. I am thankful and I am grateful for this opportunity. I punished myself in 2018. Now my life is stable. I told myself, first focus on immigration and then you can start a YouTube channel. Now I started it before, very carelessly and very poorly, but I still accomplished my dreams. And this is the conclusion of this video. If I go back to my 18-year-old self and I tell him, hey, you will have a YouTube channel and you will have 25,000 subs, he will not believe me. Because again, I only wanted to become a YouTuber, but I never saw myself becoming a YouTuber. And now I'm a YouTuber, even though I'm a very small YouTuber. So now there are 3 things that I'm focusing on, and I want to share all of these things with you. The first thing is to graduate from my university. I have a Spanish major. I need to finish it in a year from now. 2 semesters and 1 year left. The second step is to get a green card. My family and I, we are asylees, and now we're just waiting for a green card. And the last step, which is the most important step for me, is to expand my business, expand my YouTube channel, expand the content that I'm doing. And I previously mentioned when I wanted to become a YouTube content creator involving video gaming, this is a dream that I want to accomplish. And I cannot accomplish this dream without all of you. Even though I never beg for likes, I never beg for comments, starting a YouTube gaming channel is a plan that I have in the near future, right? Just a way to expand my business and expand my content. And this is something that I'll talk about again in a future video that will come out in a few days or in a week from now. looking back at my younger self and the things that he went through and the things that I'm going through now, I can definitely say, I can proudly say this whole journey, from 2014 all the way to 2025 now, 11 years, basically, this entire journey was the worst, but at the same time, the best experience in my life. I got so much experience from this journey. At the same time, there were a lot of bad things that happened, but at the same time, good things that happened. And I'm grateful and I'm thankful for this opportunity. A tale about not seeing a future. This is the topic of this video, and it's my first personal video on this channel. Whether you're a newcomer or you already know my channel from the beginning, this is my first personal video. I will be making a few more personal videos in this format where I just, freely talk with no script. And in the next video, the topic will be about my hot take on big YouTubers. Okay? Thank you all for watching this video and making it this far. Thank you for listening to my story and for listening to things that I shared with you. Thank you all. Goodbye.